genre.
Welcome back to the Doctor's Companion Presents Doctor Who The Long Way Round, the weekly podcast where we review and discuss every episode of Doctor Who, one doctor at a time. I'm Cass Fredrickson.
I'm Nick Jimenez.
And I'm Scott Corelli.
And today on the show we'll be discussing The Hand of Fear, the Fourth Doctor's 13th story, and Sarah Jane's last appearance in Classic Who for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. End of an era.
And the other instance of her in Classic Who is like the canon of it is pretty nebulous.
Yes,
right?
Yeah. Because she's in Five Doctors, right?
Oh, right. That's right. She's in Five Doctors, but she'll have no memory of being.
Yeah,
in
she
Five
has no
Doctors,
memory of
so.
that place.
Oh, is that how it ends? Does it end with them all being like memory wiped? So it technically like never happened?
I think so.
Yeah. It's how a lot of those multi-doctor stories go, is like the doctors don't remember anymore, but like also in that particular case, none of the companions do either. But yeah.
That's funny. Does 10 remember meeting 5 in that one like webisode that happened?
I don't think so.
Interesting.
There's always like a thing where it's like when they meet, their timelines meet.
Mm-hmm.
Like when they separate, it's like it just gets
It like resets.
pulled out of their brain.
Yeah.
It's so that there's no like continuity issues.
Sure.
Yeah. Of like, wait, if 10 met 11, then he would know that this was going to happen, and he can't know that, or otherwise he would have done something different, and he can't do anything different because we already saw it happen. So, yeah.
What a mess.
We'll talk about that on season 14.
That's
be talking
soon.
about we'll be talking about a multi-doctor story in season 14 of Long Way Around, and season 15 actually. Yeah, we do 5 doctors next season, and then we do 3 doctors the season after that. So, in any event, The Hand of Fear, which is written by good old Baker and Martin, Bob Baker and Dave Martin, who also wrote the story that we talked about last week, The Mutants. This is a huge step up from The Mutants.
Yeah.
Which I would place mostly in the hands of like Hinchcliffe and Holmes, who were the producer and script editor at the time. And because as I'll talk about, this story could have been a lot worse than it was. So Bob Baker and Dave Martin's previous story at this time was the Centauran Experiment, which was that weird like 2-part Centauran episode with the Fourth Doctor and Sarah Jane and Harry, I think, was in that as well.
Yes.
Yeah. And it was just like this little 2-part thing: rock quarry, city. And a Centauran. But that was the last time they worked on, and they were already pitching their next thing. And the story that they pitched, which was, at the time, Hinchcliffe and Holmes were sort of like working through this sort of Gothic literature adaptation of Doctor Who. And so The Hand of Fear was meant to be this sort of like adaptation of Le Mans d'Orlac. I'm not saying that right, I'm positive. From Maurice Renard, and then was turned into a film starring Christopher Lee called The Hands of Orlac or Orlock. And so he was like, Holmes was just like, hey, I want there to be like a hand thing, and it's alive. And they're like, okay. And so that's what they came up with this story idea. And the other thing that we've talked about in this era is that Hinchcliffe and Holmes were like, we need to get rid of Unit because it's boring and it sucks, and we don't want to ever be able to go back to there ever again. And so originally this was designed to be the end of Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart. This was going to be the final story of season 13 of Doctor Who, which would, eventually become the Seeds of Doom, which we talked about couple episodes ago. But they were like, yeah, we're going to kill off Brigadier. He's going to go out in a blaze of glory. And take all of Unit with him, basically, in a way. So the original outline for Hand of Fear was going to be 6 parts. The setting being the 1990s, in a time when technology and the military were both prohibited. Sarah would be sent to live in a commune, while the Doctor was relegated to a labor camp. There he met the now much older Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart, who was like secretly part of the extraterrestrial xenological intelligence task force. And together with an anthropologist, they unearthed a mysterious fossilized hand. The hand took control of the archaeologist, forced him to transport it to the Newton nuclear reactor, which was the same nuclear reactor that was in Baker and Martin's 71 story, The Claws of Axos, which we've already watched.
I believe you,
Nick. That was the one with the gold people.
Oh, okay, cool. Great.
Yeah.
They should start titling these like Friends episodes.
Yeah, the one with the gold people. And so this nuclear reactor was in the process of being decommissioned, and that's why they're able to like easily break in, and then the radiation regenerates the hand into a creature called the Omegan, which had crash landed on Earth after its journey from the interior of a black hole. Turned out there were 2 Omegans working on Earth, representing different factions of their people, while the Hawk Omegans wished to destroy humanity. The Dove Omegans simply wanted to nullify mankind's potential to become an interstellar threat. They were in the process of accompanying this by slowly devolving people into ape-like trogs. And this was initially manifested as a backlash against science. Sarah was now enduring the same regression into a trog. This was undone, however, when the Hawk Omegon destroyed his Dove counterpart. He then fled Earth in the other Omegan's spaceship, having configured Newton, the nuclear reactor, decommissioned nuclear reactor, to explode and obliterate the planet. At the last second, the Doctor managed to redirect the power of the blast to fuel an experimental rocket called the Icarus. Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart commandeers the Icarus and uses it to pursue the Omegan. Realizing that the Omegan was planning to cause a global catastrophe by suicidally ramming his spaceship into the planet, the Brigadier sacrifices himself by forcing the Omegan to collide with the Icarus. And that's how that was going to end.
That kind of reminds me of how he tried to kill himself in that audio adventure we listened to.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
might have even been a reference to that.
That's weird.
Possibly. Yeah. Which I think we're gonna hear in like a couple
in 2
weeks.
episodes. Yeah.
Yeah, we've already recorded
my
that
bad,
one,
my bad.
but so that was the original idea, and it was going to be directed by Douglas Camfield, and the production team was like pretty pleased with this outline, and commissioned it, but it still was like continuing to evolve over time. One of the characters that was in the original draft was replaced by Harry Sullivan, the former companion. So they brought him back. The calcified, along with the calcified hand, an Omegan spaceship referred to as the Monolith was now discovered at the start of episode 1 and became central to the storyline, providing the location for the adventure's climax. Separate factions of Omegans were removed from the story. And Baker and Martin also introduced a new supporting character in the form of a Time Lord named Drax, an untrustworthy Gallifreyan mechanic who wanted to steal the TARDIS to add it to his collection. Drax was conceived as a possible recurring character for Doctor Who. Yeah. So then, so as autumn was coming up, and Hinchcliffe and Holmes became concerned that the scripts for The Hand of Fear still required a lot of work to iron out the convoluted plot. Holmes was too busy to do rewrites on The Hand of Fear because he was doing the wholesale rewrite of The Brain of Morbius. Go back and listen to the Brain of Morbius episode if you want to be reminded of why he was wholesale rewriting Brain of Morbius. But it prevented him from reviewing any of their work until late September, which meant that he'd barely have like a month before production was due to begin. So that's why Robert Banks Stewart was hastily commissioned to write The Seeds of Doom to replace The Hand of Fear, and then Hand of Fear would be dropped from season 13 and pushed to the second to last slot of season 14. So Seeds of Doom happens, and during this, they are negotiating Elizabeth Sladen's new contract, and she was like, look, I don't want to just disappear. I want you to write me out, but I'm done. So get me out of here. And, you know, at the time they were like, wow, you're going to be the longest running companion in the series history. Minus, I guess you could argue it's Jamie McCrimmon just because he has more episodes under his belt than Sarah Jane, but she was like around longer, for a longer period of time than he was. So they're like, okay, I guess we're going to write her out at some point. At the same time, Douglas Camfield, the director, approached the production team and was like, hey, I actually want to write an episode. I have this idea called The Lost Legion, which would be set in a French Foreign Legion outpost, which would involve the campaigns between two groups of aliens. I mean, I feel like we've seen that's like every Doctor Who's episode, literally.
Yeah, like I just read Eaters of Light last year.
Yeah,
that made me think of Big Bang. We meet a Roman Legion. That's interesting.
Well, not just that, but just like them showing up in an outpost that happens to be in the midst of a civil war.
That too, for sure.
That's like every episode. But the idea was like, oh, okay, we'll have Douglas Camfield do this. And in the climax of the story, Sarah would get killed by the last of the aliens. And that's how we'll write her out.
Whoa.
She's gonna get iced. And Elizabeth Sladen was not happy about this because she felt that that's too scary of an ending for like the young viewers of Doctor Who. She was like, kids really like me, and you know, they like give me hugs when they see me in public. Like you can't like kill me off. That would just like break their little hearts, and I don't want to do that. Which is sad. So like Hinchcliffe was really enthusiastic though about the Lost Legion and all of this, but Holmes like read the outline and was like, I don't think he's a writer. I don't think this is gonna work. And Hinchcliffe was like, what are you talking about? He pitched me the whole thing, and he's like, yeah, he pitched it to you because he's a director. He's not a writer.
Right.
I read the outline. he's not a writer. I don't think this is going to work. He wrote the first episode and basically turned it in with a bunch of notes that was like, we'll figure this out on the day and we'll figure this part out on the day. And like, I'm picturing something kind of like this here. And that's it. Like, it was not detailed really. It was barely above an outline. And Hinchcliffe was like, God damn it, Holmes, you were right. Okay. Canfield, we can't make this. Sorry, this isn't a real script. So we got to throw this out. And that means that the Hand of Fear, which was, going to be due quite a bit later, is now going to be due now because it's the furthest along that we have any of these stories. So, to rush things along, Holmes basically wrote an outline for them to follow using all of their notes from their original outline. He just sort of like rewrote the outline and handed that over to Baker and Martin and was like, here, just write it this way. And then I'll write the ending where Sarah Jane leaves. And they're like, okay. So then they write the whole thing. And at this point, Holmes was like knee deep in his next story, which he was writing himself, The Deadly Assassin, which Nick, when you see that story, you're going to be like, oh yeah, like fuck Hand of Fear.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, he was like pretty like all in on that and didn't have time to do any of the rewrites of any of the Sarah Jane like leaving the TARDIS or anything like that. So they did like a initial pass on that. The only thing they knew that was going to happen in the next story was that the Doctor was going to go to Gallifrey alone. So they came up with the whole like sort of like psychic note from Gallifrey, the psychic message, and so they quickly wrote out like an ending for Sarah Jane. Elizabeth Sladen and Tom Baker hated it, so they made it up on the fly.
Whoa!
All of that was improvised.
What?
Their whole exit, their whole exit was improvised. Because they were like, this sucks and this isn't good enough. And so like the whole idea that like she ends up in the wrong place and all of that was all them just improvising, like just having some silly fun.
That's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of become like not to say that it wasn't always like part of the character, but like, I feel like this ending for Sarah Jane Smith, being in the wrong place, and like the Doctor just not being able to pilot the TARDIS properly, has just, I think this is like what cements it as like, yeah, this is just part of it. Like he doesn't actually know how to control this stupid thing. He's really bad at it. The TARDIS does whatever it wants to do.
I love that. I mean, not to skip to the end, but it's such a lovely, restrained scene that's so sad, but also very like dignified, and it's not too maudlin. And to learn that it's just that it comes from these two actors having known these characters and each other so well, it really speaks to how much authorship they had at that point over these characters.
Yep, absolutely. So Douglas Camfield was like, well, I'm not going to direct this replacement episode. And they're like, cool. So they hire this person named Lenny Mayne, who had previously directed Curse of Peladon, The Three Doctors, and Monster of Peladon. That's cool. He directed his own sequel. That story's not nearly as good as Curse of Peladon.
It's not.
But it's still cool that they let him do that. And then they changed the name of the villains from Omegans to Castrians because they were like, that sounds too much like Omega. The villain in The Three Doctors, the story that you guys wrote, you created that guy. So you made a guy called Omega, and then you were like, and these guys are called Omegans.
But they have nothing to do with Omega.
They have nothing to do with each other. Why are you guys like this? So they renamed the aliens. They shot it. Nothing notable really happens other than Sarah Jane or Elizabeth Sladen eventually she eats a fly that was loose on the set accidentally. Which she was pretty upset about and grossed out about. But that's the only notable thing that really happened in the production other than them sort of improvising that ending. That wraps up The Hand of Fear. And now we can talk about the story, which I would say, I mean, let me look at what stories that they've done, and I'm trying to think of like yeah, I don't know that there's a Baker and Martin story that I really like more than this. Like, I like the Three Doctors, but I don't know that I like it more than this one. It might be kind of like the same, kind of equal in terms of quality. I think this and the Three Doctors are probably their two best stories. Everything else they've done is pretty mediocre to lousy. So there we go. But yeah, I'm curious what you guys thought of this. As usual, I'll start with you, Cass, because this is a revisit for you.
Yeah.
What did you think about it this time?
The only thing that I kind of recalled about this one prior to rewatching it was the first episode where like Sarah Jane is like possessed by this entity. And that's easily the best one in my opinion. But I don't know why these two guys like weird immortal like disco aliens so much.
I think you just answered your own question.
The 70s, man.
it's I don't know. It's a weird choice. And I found the resolution of it to be like really lackluster. Like it just kind of he like evil monologues himself, and then like we'll talk about it. But I don't know. I think the quality of the episodes kind of like slowly dropped off. Like episode 1's really good, and episode 2 is okay, and then episode 3 is like okay, and then episode 4 is like okay. But I do like Sarah Jane's departure was really good, in my opinion. So yeah, I don't know. This one's okay. This one's fine.
Yeah. In terms of like disco aliens, I think Eldrad is probably one of the better disco aliens.
I do like the like feminine Eldrad design a lot.
Yeah.
But
okay.
Yeah.
Nick?
I think I enjoyed it a bit more than Cass, and also kind of inverted weirdly. I mean, I was a little miffed when Sarah Jane was as she herself kind of complains against at the end of the episode, she gets hypnotized again. And so I'm like, oh man, because I knew this was her last story, and so I don't want like hypnotized non-Sarah Jane when we have such little Sarah Jane left. But as we'll get into, Elizabeth Sladen is just such a good actress that I found that she found interesting stuff to do while being hypnotized. I liked Eldrad. I thought they were the pretty surprisingly nuanced for a classic Who villain. To the point where there's like a chunk in the middle around like 3 or 4 where they kind of aren't a villain. It's they're almost kind of like a weird chaotic companion. And you feel like, wait, are they going to turn good? Is the Doctor and Sarah going to be able to like, because like, I think I just liked her performance, the feminine Eldrad. So I kind of wanted her to turn good. She reminded me of like, I'm exposing myself. This is maybe the most embarrassing thing I've ever said, but in My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, there's that evil, like dark unicorn pony who's like an evil princess, but then she turns good and she becomes like, hello, I'm good now, but I still talk like this. And I'm like, and I thought it was gonna be one of those, but so yeah, I had a fun time. There was minimal running back and forth. I thought the story had decent forward momentum compared to the mutants. So yeah, and then so yeah, liked it well enough. Wasn't bored by it minimally.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think I'm with you, Nick, in terms of like liking the later episodes versus the earlier episodes, and kind of for the same reason. And in fact, like Hinchcliffe, like was also really not happy for the same reasons that you weren't, Nick. That he was like, "This is her last fucking story. Why are they Hawkeyeing her? This sucks." A term that was
what does that mean?
In use even in 76.
Like MASH? Yeah. What do you mean?
Yeah, and he was like, please, Holmes, rewrite this. And he's like, I fucking can't. I look, I'm spinning gold over here. Like I don't have time for that. And he's like, fuck, you're right. Okay. And so they just kind of rolled with it, and got through it. But yeah, I don't disagree. I think my biggest issue with the first 2 episodes is like, as we'll talk about when we get into like the plot mechanics of it, it's insanely simplistic. Like you can sum it up in the first 2 episodes in like 3 or 4 sentences, and that's not great. So it feels a little wheel spinny. A lot of time is taken up with people just running between places, versus actually accomplishing anything other than, distance. So I really like, I do like the 3rd and 4th one because I do like Eldred. I think she's cool. And I like her being in the TARDIS and stuff like that. And I think that's really fun.
Where are the guns?
Yeah. He's like, in my brain. I'm like, well, that fucking sucks.
That's great.
He's like, well, there's nothing you can do about it even if you wanted to. She's like, fine, I'll put my mirror eyes away. So anyway, yeah, I think she's cool. I would not mind Eldred like showing back up in this new like era of like gods and new who we've got going on.
Yeah, I mean, they say even the doctor, Sarah Jane's like, is he really dead? And doctor's like, probably not, but it's time for us to go. Like, it's adventure's over.
It'll be a while before they come back, so it's fine. Also, that hand, big talk to me vibes. The silicone hand that they find.
Definitely. Cass, that movie would wreck your shit.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, that's true.
It's about the gross New Zealand teenagers that find this demonic.
I think just Australian.
Oh, they are Australian. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Apologies. I know it's a big faux pas. And it's like a metaphor for like teens, like, huffing paint or whatever at parties. Like, they dare each other to get possessed by this hand.
Oh my God.
And like, then they record you while you're being possessed and like doing weird stuff. And they're like, ha, right. And then.
Yeah. There's like evil shit afoot.
That's spooky.
As a result. And it goes pretty poorly, as you could imagine.
Yes.
For one kid in particular.
Yeah. To this day, didn't affect Nick too much. I think because he was raised Catholic, as he put it when we talked about it on a show once. But one of the most horrifying depictions of hell I've ever seen.
Oh shit!
Captured on film. Yeah,
wow.
It was a fucking nightmare. Yeah, haunted me for quite a while. Still does in a way. But anyway,
didn't mean to open up that wound again, Scott.
The Hand of Fear. Who's
I am
doing recaps on this
I'm
one?
doing
Nick?
recaps on this one.
All right, yeah, let's recap this shit.
So we open with I don't think this is exactly it, but it's kind of fun. Looking back retrospectively, you could almost call the first chapter of this Eldrad Must Die. Because it opens with some Kazakians or whatever they were called, Castranians, that are en route to destroy a being called Eldrad, using like a remote, something that is called an obliteration module. Man, I loved how waily and mournful Commander Zaska's performance was in this.
The outpost alien?
The outpost alien. The hooded, he was like, oh, he was just like a spooky ghost.
Yeah. I really like this opening. It honestly, it felt almost like Big Finishy more so than like classic Who to me. It felt, I was like,
definitely.
oh, this must be what Big Finish is like always going for, is like this vibe.
Like,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Even the weird like pitch that they insist on all the aliens talking in, like
Right. Yes.
yeah,
Absolutely.
it's always two weirdly pitched alien voices wailing at each other. Like,
Uh-huh.
Commander Zigzag, turn off the doobly-doo. I can't turn off the doobly. Commander Zigzag! 450 million years later.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah,
I've just been waiting.
Yeah.
You forgot about that cold open, didn't you?
No. Yeah, we just described like 5 at least.
I know we're going to talk about it in 2 weeks, but that same shit was in the Colin Baker one with the Brigadier thing that we referenced already. What the hell?
Yeah.
So weird.
I know. Yeah, I don't know.
But yeah, so they're trying to kill this being called Eldrad because he's so dangerous, but then King Rokon, who we'll also meet later, calls off the obliteration at the last minute. Things get fucked. There's an explosion, and we jump forward 150 million years to what the Doctor believes is South Croydon. Again, foreshadowing, and they're just walking through a quarry, and Sarah Jane's like, "This isn't South Croydon," and he's like, "It basically is. Shut up." You don't.
Worth noting, a real quarry. They're actually like canonically in a quarry right now.
No, yeah, good point, Scott. Like, I'm not saying quarry dismissively. Like, they call it a quarry.
Yes.
Yeah. The quarry is the location. That is where they are.
Cass, what did you think?
I would have loved if the Doctor just being like, God, this looks like so many planets we've been to.
Oh. No, Doctor, this is a quarry. Oh.
God, that would have been so good. They should have done it. Or are we going to ask Nick? Sorry.
Well, Cass, like, what do you think of... I found it funny and almost cathartic that they finally are in a quarry and they're actually doing, like, quarry things.
Yes, they are. They're like actively blowing stuff up.
Yeah. What are you doing in this quarry? Like, this guy yells at them because they're blowing stuff up and they get covered in debris. Sarah is remarkably unharmed. Like,
I mean, it looks like she gets her shit rocked.
Yeah,
but then
no pun intended.
She's mostly fine, except for funnily enough, really not intended. And yet appreciated in retrospect. But yeah, like, I mean, she just gets buried in rocks, and then the only thing that she gets out of that exchange is finding the hand and the ring that she grabs and holds.
And not unlike Steve Rogers and that one deleted scene in The Incredible Hulk where he tries to commit suicide, but he lets out a roar and that loosens the sheet of ice that Steve Rogers was buried in. This quarry explosion loosens Eldrad's hand with the ring on it, and Sarah grabs onto it thinking it's the Doctor, presumably, and so it's like she is the first human to living organism to make contact with the hand of Eldrad in 150 million years, which we learn later has big plot ramifications.
Right. It makes Eldridge want to be a lady.
Yeah, which we'll talk about. It's interesting to look the kind of layers of that. I like the one construction guy who's like, "Look, I don't mean to be heartless, but you really shouldn't have been here. So I don't take responsibility for whatever we're gonna find under this rock." Also should be noted, Sarah Jane, along with this being her final adventure, is wearing one of her most iconic fits, which is saying something. Her Andy Pandy overalls, her pink overalls.
Oh my God. I feel like I say this every time, but this is Is this the cutest Sarah Jane outfit? I feel like it is.
The cutest? I think yes. I mean, she literally looks like an adorable like host of a children's program.
Oh my God. I want that outfit so bad.
Like, I feel like she's going to turn to the camera and be like, can you see the,
Right?
the hand of fate
Like,
or whatever the fuck?
Literally, no exaggeration. I was on my phone looking up like vintage striped overalls. So I was like, damn. Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah. The shoes, the kind of like, I don't know if they're Vans, but that kind of like the red sneakers like that she's wearing. No, she looks great. I couldn't help but, Scott, when you mentioned like can you imagine being a child in the 70s, like 7 or 8, and you're walking around London and you just see like Elizabeth Sladen just walking around? That must be like seeing like Steve from Blue's Clues or something like out.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Nick, you shared that like article with like all of her little outfits, and it's just one stunner after another, honestly. I really like that little vest number, the blue like little like crimpy vest that she has.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That one's a really cute outfit too.
Her like kind of like Western shirt.
Yeah, vaguely Western inspired. Yeah.
I mean,
that's good.
I mean, like all of the companions, like I like the kind of mod uniformed look that the second Doctor's companions have. And then, I really do think you have to go all the way to Rose until you reach another companion with this much like style and like variation as well.
Right, because they become like the Doctor, where they have like basically like one outfit essentially, or they have like a notable item that they always wear, like Ace in her bomber jacket. I
don't know. I think Perry had some really cute outfits too.
Yeah, for sure.
Not as many as Sarah Jane, but like there's definitely some where I'm like, I like that. I want to cosplay that.
Yeah. No,
oh man. I think my favorite outfit of hers is the trench coat outfit from Seeds of Doom, though. That's like her at her most like Lois Lane. It's the best
for sure.
Yeah.
Liz. Also, no. What was Kate, the third Doctor's companion?
Joe.
Yeah, she always had some good looks. I mean, like Amy had that one iconic outfit that you saw at Comic-Con for like 5 years, with like the red and the skirt, the mini skirt. But
I always felt most of her outfits were a little awkward looking because of how fucking tall she is. It just didn't feel like a lot of her outfits didn't feel like they were designed with her proportions in mind. They all felt kind of store-bought or something. But
like I struggled to visualize other Amy Pond outfits besides like that iconic season 5 look.
Sure. And the gym, I remember the gym jams, and I remember the police kissing.
Oh
sure.
yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And Clara's just so 2010s. Like
she is. She always dressed very cuddly though. Like she just looks so comfy and just like cozy.
Yeah,
like
she's always got like a sweater and like a cute little skirt with it.
Yeah.
Like a more sophisticated like Zooey Deschanel New Girl aesthetic.
Yeah.
Like soft quirky, not like quirky. But anyway, so they cart Sarah Jane off to the hospital. She has the ring over her finger. And we meet a doctor, not Watson, but another doctor. I liked him. He had a cool vibe, and they're like, I was kind of in defense of this first episode. I did like the doctor and this other doctor just kind of science vibing. Like he was incredulous, but not obnoxiously so. Like he was like, oh shit, you're right. Like the hand is like, he's looking at the hand and he's like, there's like no living tissue on this thing. Like, I think you need to bring this to like a geologist or a histologist, because like this wasn't alive ever. And the doctor's like, well, it could be if it was silicone based life. And then the other doctor's like, get the fuck out of here. What do you mean?
Which I think was like a fairly new concept in science. The idea of silicone based life was like a fairly like new concept at the time. So this was like an exciting like scientific development that this could be a thing. That this was like a theory that was like making the rounds.
Yeah, that's a good point,
Scott.
Like now we kind of, there is alien life. Like we know that on other planets there's like organisms out there that are alive, but they're just, alive in the way that like plankton are, or like algae, as opposed to like a Vulcan or an Ood.
Yeah, an Ood. Two of the more chill.
Oh man, that'd be great. We'd really
listening to the two of them talk to each other would be one of the most boring conversations I think I've ever heard.
A Ood and a Vulcan.
Just be asleep.
Yeah. And yeah, we learned that whatever this hand is, it's been under the quarry for 150 million years, and Sarah was the first being to unearth it. And then we get her waking up, and she's been hypnotized, and she keeps repeating like Eldad must live.
I mean, might as well have been Eldad. I did want to mention there was that funny joke that I feel like becomes an ongoing joke every once in a while. It comes up where that doctor guy is like, "Oh, you're a doctor too? Where did you go to? Where did you learn?" And he was like, "Gallifrey." He's like, "Gallifrey must be in Ireland."
That's funny. It does kind of sound
good.
Gaelic.
Yeah, it's good.
And so Sarah breaks out of the hospital. She like zaps the hospital doctor with a ring, which ends up kind of spreading the hypnosis to him. We learn there's the joke of the doctor, the lowercase d. He wakes up. I wish I'd written his name down. He wakes up and he's like, "Hey, the girl broke out. Yeah, there's a girl. She's wearing dark hair and she's wearing like pink overalls. Yeah, it's just like Andy Pandy." That's which was a British television series I had to look up. With like a Muppet or something. And like the hand is absorbing radiation and regenerating. So Sarah Jane takes the hand to a nuclear research facility or like a factory. And the episode 1 ends with Sarah barricading herself in this radiation chamber, and the hand begins to twitch to life just like a real hand, Scott.
Yep. I really like all of like how this episode is like weirdly playing with regeneration in how other species do it, but it's like kind of, it's just interesting. Like how many times is the doctor like, regenerated because of radiation overdose, but then this is like regenerating because of radiation, but in a good way. It's like being powered by the radiation to regenerate. And then later, like when it changes genders and everything, like it's, I don't know. All of that is very interesting to me, like that they're like playing in that world. And I'm wondering if Drax, the Time Lord mechanic character, if that was going to have, if any of that was like due to them writing that character out of the story, if there was like something going on with him and all of this, or how any of that worked. I don't know.
I'm wondering too if because you mentioned that Holmes like wrote them the outline, like and he was already working on Deadly Assassins, so he's like, oh no, I'll just like have them set up, like remind people that Gallifrey exists, that regeneration's a thing, that like blah blah blah, and then like he can just hit the ground running next story.
Yeah,
which is honestly really smart.
Really smart, actually. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I'm a big fan of how this story plays out, I think.
In defense of this first episode, I know it sounds really boring, but I really like the tension of it. I like Sarah Jane going on a crime spree, breaking into a nuclear reactor, like blinding people with this weird ring. I liked all the different like shaky cam stuff. I think that's not like shaky cam for me is like really hit or miss, and I liked it here because I don't feel like it was overused. And I don't know, I just liked all the tension of this once Sarah Jane escapes from the hospital.
No, for sure. Like we don't know what's wrong with her. They don't know what's wrong with her. And the tension kind of proceeds into episode 2, where it's kind of like a thriller for 20 minutes of like, oh shit, we're all gonna die. Like this reactor is about to overheat and explode.
Mm-hmm.
So part 2 begins with we meet Dr. Watson, who proves to be pretty important. He is sort of the head honcho of this nuclear reactor facility. And let me just tell you, listeners, we complain a lot about the archetype of like the middle management guy who's like stuffy and stubborn and won't listen to the doctor. And so even though this guy proves to be somewhat problematic and a hindrance, what a breath of fresh air that he is like incredulous, but then quickly assesses the situation and is like, okay, I can trust these two. Like when the time comes, he's kind of like, he goes with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is really nice. You're right.
That means he's a good manager.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So meanwhile, Doctor and Carter, I looked his name up, Dr. Carter from the hospital, they race to the facility as shutdown procedures have begun because, according to Dr. Watson, there's like a mad woman who's like knocked out 2 of the guards and has barricaded herself in the like reactor chamber. And so we have to evacuate. The doctor and Carter are like, no, she's from the hospital. She escaped. And the doctor's like, is there a way to get in there? And the assistant lady is like, well, you can get through this tube, but like, it's like 200 degrees Celsius, so you'll burn. And the doctor's like, not if I'm quick. And she's like, that's not how that works. But
right.
Just picture him slithering like a snake through an air duct, all 6'5" of them.
Yeah.
And while this is happening, we zoom in on Carter, and he also has a voice in his head saying Eldrad must live. So that's when we learn, like, oh shit, it spread to him. He's been hypnotized too. The doctor is able to get the reactor under control and snap Sarah Jane out of her hypnosis. And we learn that there was so they get Sarah Jane out of there, and everyone's like, what was wrong with her? And she's like, oh, let me just tell you off camera real quick. And while that explanation is happening, we see that the hand has been like activated. And Sarah leaves, the doctor leaves the ring behind accidentally when she's carrying Sarah out. And the ring is picked up by another employee at this nuclear reactor named Driscoll. So now it spreads to Driscoll, and now Driscoll is like acting on behalf of the hand. Now that Sarah is free of her hypnosis, she's able to tell the doctor a little bit more about what happened to her, like what kind of mindset she was in. So now Driscoll is the one that's like doing reactor stuff, and part 2 ends with the reactor is about to explode, and we have to evacuate the complex. Driscoll goes on a tear, and now he's the one knocking out people. So he's kind of just doing what Sarah Jane was doing in episode 1. But yeah, I mean, I like this episode because it did have like a cool momentum to it of like, it's like a chamber piece where we are just kind of like in this reactor and like with these employees. Oh, and notably, I think this is the part where Carter dies. Like Carter tries to attack the doctor, and he has a big fall. Falls.
He swings like a big wrench.
A big cartoon wrench.
Yeah, and then but swings it too hard and falls off the stairs and like 10 stories down to like the concrete floor. And the doctor just like watches him like with like a I don't even know how to describe the look at it. Yeah, just like he kind of like wow. That's what that looks like. Okay. Like but that's a pretty embarrassing way to go out, my guy. Anyway.
But yeah, good to have Sarah Jane back in episode 2, free of mind control. But yeah, I thought she did good acting. Like good, she gives really good like creepy haunted little girl performance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a vague like Victorian quality to her sometimes.
but like menacingly so.
Yeah, menacing Victorian child. Yeah.
There's a vibe. Cass, any other thoughts on part 2 before we just move straight on into part 3?
Oh man. Okay, so the part where Watson like calls his family to say goodbye because the reactor's melting down. I'm like, there's no, I know it feels like kind of cheap, but like there's no way to get me quicker to like sympathize with this guy where he's just like, goodbye, my love. Like, just like, oh my God.
The what always gets me, and it did this time, is when it's like when it stays on him and he's like trying to, oh mom, can you go get mom real quick? Like when you can imagine that they're doing something, they're in the middle of their day, and he's like, I need you to go get mom real quick, or like, oh, what are you doing? You're playing? Oh, that's nice. And the actor's trying to like keep it in and not,
It's really good.
He is, yeah.
It was really good. Yeah.
His assistant character, I liked her too. She had just kind of like, she just seemed like a real, like a working scientist, you know? So good supporting cast in this. So Driscoll gets vaporized. We're in part 3, and we are, as the doctor remarks, and as Sarah sort of pokes fun at, there is a sort of unexplosion that happens.
Because he phones like the army, and then like 2 planes go and they drop missiles on the facility,
right?
And then they like don't go off.
Yeah.
Whereas the doctor says fission happens. But instead of the explosion coming outward, the hand absorbs all of it, and all of the fission is like compounded inward, and the hand just absorbs it.
But did you notice that Tom Baker, when he's performing this, he reversed his blocking? So when he's like talking, he says there was an explosion. And he pulls his hands in, and then he's like, and instead the hand absorbed it all and like does an exploding out motion.
That's funny.
It was just really funny.
And they kept that take.
Yeah, they sure did.
It's we're kind of like getting so the hand, as Scott said, is regenerating. Instead of energy being born out of matter is being created from energy. And this hand is slowly regenerating into a full person. We see that the missiles aren't effective, so the doctor deduces that it's time to use a much older weapons like diplomacy and talk and conversation, which shades of like that Silurian 2-parter where it's kind of a recurring thing where the doctor kind of has to act as like a peace broker.
Yeah.
Which is nice. I love the moment where the doctor they ran out of the reactor facility because they thought it was going to get bombed, but then when it doesn't work, he's like, well, I'm going back in. And Sarah Jane's like, I'm going to go with you. And Dr. Watson's like, I don't think you should, and like holds her back, and she's like, you're right, I shouldn't, but I will. And she just like runs. And I love their little back and forth, especially because we know that this is like their last ride together, of where she's like, what, I worry about you. And he's like, yeah, but I worry about you. And she's like, okay, then we'll just worry about each other. Deal. But they're walking the whole time. So there's this kind of nice, like Scully and Mulder kind of walk and talk happening. And yeah, I always loved the chemistry that these 2 actors had with each other. And how easy and unforced it was, even during the most pedestrian of Doctor Who episodes.
Definitely.
We meet Eldrad comes out fully formed, and she has like a feminine humanoid crystal look. I really love this actress's performance. Just very big and stylized, but also like weirdly believable. Like, I don't know, just kind of, I hesitate to say the word human, but lifelike. And so she's like, I am Eldrad, I'm the creator of Castria, and we later learn all of this was bullshit, but she spins this tale of like, yeah, there were these 2 alien planets that use Castria as their battleground and undid all the work I did, because at first we were getting ravaged by winds and the planet became inhospitable. So I created these like shields that protected the air and life was able to flourish, but then these warring aliens ruined it all. And so I have to go back there and continue my work and save my beloved planet. And the doctor's like, well, unfortunately, that was 150 million years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we use what Scott referred to. She uses her like blue disco eyes to like force herself into the doctor's mind and like make sure that he's telling the truth. She's like, "Oh, you're a Time Lord. Then you're able to take me back to my planet and 150 million years from now ago, so I can fix stuff." And the doctor's like, "Well, that's like the first rule, is I can't do that."
Yeah.
Like, I can take you to Castria, but it has to be present day Castria. And she's like, whatever works. Watson, while this is going on, sneaks in with a handgun and tries to shoot Eldrad. And she starts to like kill him. But the doctor's like, if you kill him, I'm not going to help you. And she's like, okay. Like, I'm not as cruel as you think I am. No harm will come to him, even though he just got like blasted by radiation. And yeah, they're having this interesting back and forth where, Eldrad's like, I'm not as cruel as you think I am. And she's like trying to find her way into this, like, what are the rules of this new time period she finds herself in? Cass, what did you think of Eldrad?
I do like this actress's performance. I think like this whole serial is like really well directed. The design is really cool, but it reminded me of I don't even know what those two were called, but the Flux aliens.
Oh yeah, she's a very Chibnallian in her design.
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe that's why like something in like deep in me was just like, no, thank you. But she is really cool. I prefer this iteration of Eldrad to the one we get later on, where it's like Maskov.
Yeah, the one later on is the more Chibnall-y one of the two, I think. I think this one feels more like a Russell T Davies villain.
That's true. She kind of looks like that tree lady.
Yes,
now that
100%.
Yeah.
She looks like the tree lady, and like I feel like there was a few others that kind of look like her too. But yeah, I think RTD was like, no, we got to let the pretty ladies still be pretty to a certain extent, we got
our gendered aliens.
Yeah, and then Chibnall was like, fuck gender, fuck pretty.
Which
I'm gonna make them look fucked up and hard to look at. That's what a real alien would look like.
I appreciate it up to a point where I'm like, no, I don't want to look at this at all.
Right. He's like, exactly.
Right. No, when we get to Big Crystal Papa in the end.
Yeah.
Crystalatu, because when you zoom in, he kind of has like a weird mustache.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that's very, very much in the vein of Tim Shaw.
Yes.
Big and shouty and ugly to look at, which is Chibnall's vibe.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think the costume for this one and her makeup is really good. So.
Yeah. Like, it looks... She could be in an RTD era episode, and I don't think she would look too out of place.
No. Yeah.
Scott, is she technically a companion?
It's tricky, right? Because it's not like she was invited on the TARDIS. It was more just like, oh, you could solve a problem for me, so it's almost in duress. It's not quite in duress, but it's almost in duress.
Yeah.
So I don't know that it qualifies technically, but
it's like, oh, if you help me, I'll leave this planet alone. And the doctor's like, okay. So they go aboard the TARDIS. Yeah, we get that fun line where she's like, where are its armaments? And the doctor's like, in here.
Right in my brain.
Big old big brain. She's like, that's stupid.
And he's like, it's stupid like a fox.
Just like me, stupid like a fox. and they, hey, like, give me the coordinates or whatever. And like I said, there was this kind of fascinating, before reaching the end, there's like, oh, well, if you're going to trust me, I have to trust you. And she's like not used to trusting people, Eldrad, because she's been betrayed by her own race. And so every little shift that happens, she's like, what are you doing? Put that down. Stop that. You're going to kill me? And the doctor's like, no, dude, like, relax. And then she's like, maybe I will. And I'm like, God, I kind of hope she turns good. I kind of like her vibe. But then they arrive on Castria. She opens the door and gets like stabbed through the chest with like a spear.
Yes.
And that's our episode 3 cliffhanger.
It's a crazy cliffhanger because you're just like, what the fuck just happened? What?
And it's a cliffhanger where the villain is in peril and the audience is like, oh no, she's in danger. Because it's like, you kind of want her to be okay at this point because she kind of has like an uneasy alliance with it. And we think that she's like, this spurned ruler of a planet.
Right.
So we arrive at part 4. They're on Castria. There's like a series of booby traps that have been laid out for them. I love the part where Sarah Jane steps into like a sonic force field and she's like, ah, and Eldrad's like, no, it's okay. It only affects you if you're silicone based. She's like, get up, Sarah. It only affects you if you're silicone based.
You big baby.
You're from South Croydon, for God's sake. Have some things. She's like, it's.
Yeah, the thing that she gets stabbed with though has acid in it that like eats her silicone business, and so they need to get her down to a regenerator chamber.
Yes,
which is like why they're going through all these booby traps and stuff.
Yes, thank you, Scott.
Yeah,
there's a moment where they're like, they're making their way through the terrain and the booby trap, and she's like, well, Sarah Jane is like, where is everybody? And the doctor's like, well, if you're made of stone, you turn into sand. So technically we're like walking through them. And Sarah Jane's like, oh God. Because there's just like sand everywhere.
Yeah. It's like a planet of like skulls everywhere. Just
so
like that bad dream that Zack Snyder's Superman had.
Right. Yeah. Skulls, Kal-El. No. So there's a moment, listeners, where because like Eldrad is like very out of it because she's been poisoned, so they're kind of like dragging her through this terrain. And there's a part where she's like Eldrad is leaning up against Sarah, and Sarah's like sandwiched between a boulder and Eldrad, and she's like, oh, she's heavier than she looks, and you're like, oh, that makes sense because she's like a rock lady. And then there's a moment where 4 just fucking deadlifts Eldrad like she's a mannequin, and it's just like, God, Tom Baker is a fucking beast.
It's pretty wild. Yeah.
Oh, is that where he's carrying her across that random chasm?
Wow,
man, just a unit,
right? Yeah,
it's true. But not that unit.
Like 3 has karate skills, but 4 is just a fucking brute. He's just like an ent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they arrive at the chamber, and it's funny because like they put her on this slab, and then a rock comes and smushes Eldrad, and it lifts up, and there's just a dust outline of a person. And Sarah Jane's like, "Oh, we killed her. Oh man, she's dead." And the doctor's like, "Oh yeah, this was a trap. It must have been a trap. Like the Khazradians, the Kradians, or whatever. They didn't want her here." And so, but then it turns out it was a regeneration chamber, and the final like perfect Eldrad comes out, I guess. and now he is like, "Ah, yes, my final form. Ah, why so surprised, Doctor? You of all people should know about regeneration." And the doctor's like, "I wasn't surprised. Sarah Jane was surprised. I knew what was going on the whole time."
Super like a fox, remember?
Yeah. But no, it is interesting, Scott. That Time Lords don't have dominion over, regeneration.
Mm-hmm.
Multi-gendered regeneration.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, why? And Sarah Jane's like, well, why is she a he? And then she has this moment, this really subtle acting moment of like, wait, did that come out offensive? I didn't mean to say that.
Yeah. She like snaps her mouth shut after she says it, where she's just like, oh, I regret saying that as soon as it came out of my mouth.
Oops.
That felt wrong.
Oops. I'm an ally.
That felt like the wrong question to ask.
And Perfect Eldrad is like, yes, well, you were the first being that I came in contact with, Sarah Jane, so I modeled I wanted to create a form that your primitive race would find trustworthy, so I modeled myself after you. And in my head, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like, yeah, was she subconsciously, did the Doctor and Sarah Jane find her more trustworthy and more protective of because she was femme, because she was like more female? And we don't dwell on that, but I was like, that's kind of like, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That is interesting. I mean, I guess it's, it's also like, I guess if she's referencing, if her initial body was referencing Sarah Jane, and like, the Doctor is very protective of Sarah Jane, so then it's like a sort of like, I don't know. There's, I don't want to give like too much credit to Baker and Martin in terms of like them like really thinking this through as like a final Sarah Jane adventure.
Right.
But it is interesting that the villain is like using Sarah Jane to like the Doctor's like love of Sarah Jane to like its own I guess like needs.
Yeah, like
whatever.
manipulating him into helping.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, as if to be like you're too connected to this woman. You should leave her somewhere randomly in England, and go home to Gallifrey.
It even made me examine my own gender bias. I'm like, oh shit! Like, did I find the previous version of Eldrad more sympathetic and wanting to think that she was good because she was more female designed or more female coded? Like, when I play a video game and I have to choose between saving like the male NPC and the female NPC, I'm usually more inclined to save the female NPC because like men suck and girls are cool. And I was like, I'm gonna unpack this.
Yeah, it's good.
What's his face? So the King Rokon is like taunting Eldrad from like a video screen. And
he's like super dead though. Like it's from like, it was recorded like a really long time ago.
So Eldrad is like, I'm gonna kill you because we learned that all of that about the alien race was like a crock of shit, and like Eldrad was actually the person who destroyed the barriers and damned the planet. And so now he runs into the chamber and finds King Rykon, but like he's rubble because it's been 150 million years, and like, oh, he was taunting you from beyond the grave. And Eldrad is like, oh, well, I'll just go to the race codex. Again, kind of weirdly Man of Steel.
Time Lordy.
Yeah, and Time Lord.
Yeah.
And then, but the combs, the data drive is empty. And Eldrad's like, what's going on? And then, kind of like Jor-El and Man of Steel, a hologram of the long dead King Rykon is like, yeah, we hated you so much. You were such a horrible ruler that the race, we chose final oblivion, and the Castrians chose to just die out and erase its codex rather than take the chance that you would come back and control us again. And Sarah Jane's like, yeah, I get it. Like, I wouldn't want to be ruled by you either. And Perfect Eldrad is like, yeah, wait, that's a heck of an idea, because the humans, as primitive as they are, they complained that the Castrinians had no appetite for conquest and didn't want to expand their empire, and so that's why they ultimately like destroyed the barriers and damned their own race. And so they're like, I'll just go back and enslave the humans, and the Doctor's like, can't do that. And so they solve the problem by holding the ring out like a carrot on a stick, like I got your magic ring, and then you know that massive fucking scarf the Fourth Doctor is always wearing, listeners? That's like 20 feet long, and I've always said he should use it like a platforming character to like swing and like, you know, explore and hop and jump. They hold it out across two rocks and trip Eldred. Eldred trips over the scarf and falls down the massive abyss cavern. And the Doctor,
endless abyss.
The endless
you just fall forever.
And the Doctor's like, well, that'll keep him busy until, you know, Ncuti got what's problem now.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he specifically says like, hey, yeah, so silicon-based life forms, they don't have blood, so they're actually really hard to kill. So we're just not going to kill him. We're just going to make him fall into an endless abyss that he'll never be able to get out of. And hopefully he'll die at some point. I don't know.
Kind of brutal.
Anyway,
when you put it like
yes.
that.
Let's go.
Like,
and take your ring with you. Just throws that down too.
Eat shit. Yeah, like the Doctor doesn't kill very often, so when he does, it is always a little disquieting.
Although this kill is very similar to like the logic behind the kill in Batman Begins of like, I'm not going to kill you, but I don't have to save you. You're like, I mean, you basically killed him then.
Also, on that line, something I've kind of thought about recently, because I was like, oh, that's so cool when I was a kid. But now I'm like, well, yeah, you do. You're Batman. Like, you do have to save him.
Yeah. Yeah, of course you do. Yeah. That's right. If you don't, what the fuck? What good are you?
Right. That's the point.
Yeah. What do you even stand for at that point?
So back on the TARDIS, they're doing the thing where he's like he's fixing the TARDIS console, and he's like, screwdriver, you know, calling out for tools, and Sarah Jane's like, this sucks. Like, I want to feel like a human again. I want to wash my hair. I want to not get hypnotized for like a span of 72 hours. You know what? I'm just going to take my goodies and go. And the Doctor's like, you know, screwdriver, bolt, dead.
What? What did you say?
Yeah.
I said I'm going to take my goodies and I'm going to go. And so she storms off. And while she's gone, the Doctor gets his psychic call from Gallifrey. And he's like, hey, asshole, come back to Gallifrey. We need you for Gallifrey stuff. And, you know, it's
leave the human behind.
Yeah. And the Doctor's like, oh, can't take Sarah Jane to Gallifrey. And then, you know, it's really sad. Sarah Jane comes out with all of her bags ready to, you know, and she's like, well, I'm leaving, Dick. And the Doctor's like, oh, good. You know that you have to leave. And she's like, wait, no, I was kidding. I was doing a bit. And yeah, it's so cool now knowing that this was improvised.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
because the scene is like the scene is like 7 minutes long or something. Like it's like pretty hefty.
It's hefty but it's so cool that there's like not a ton of dialogue. It's very like, so you have to go. It's like, yeah, I have to go, and I can't come with you. And he's like, no, you can't come with me. And what's so cool is like she gets it. She's not like a lot of other companions where it would be like, well, no, I have to. I love you. I love the power. I love the thrill. And she's like, no, like I get it, man. And it's goodbye, but it's like not goodbye.
Yeah.
It's just a really lovely scene between the two of them.
She is like upset though that she's not going to go to Gallifrey. She's like, you can't go to Gallifrey. I'm not like, I'll stick around and go to Gallifrey. I want to see Gallifrey. And he's like, no. And she's like, God, well, now this sucks worse than it did before.
There is something almost kind of metatextual of, you know, the companion being a fan. As the companion is fan, Sarah Jane being like, but all this time I finally get to see Gallifrey. And the Doctor's like, you don't, I know it sounds cool, but you don't want to go to Gallifrey. It kind of sucks.
Yeah.
I love that big sleepy dog that's outside.
Yeah. Although she gives it shit, and then the dog is like, bye. And just like leaves.
And I love that really kind of subtle, understated, like freeze frame of Sarah Jane kind of like mid looking back and just kind of like just taking a moment to be like, hey, hell yeah, Elizabeth Sladen. But we're not quite in modern Who where there's like, literal bombastic fanfare every time a companion leaves.
Right. Yeah. But she's in the wrong place. She doesn't even know where she is. She's just gonna like wander around until she finds someone to like take her home, I guess.
Poor Sarah Jane.
Poor Sarah Jane. Also, when she says she's gonna go get her stuff, she comes out and she's holding like a raincoat, a stuffed owl, and a potted flower.
Yeah.
Those are her goodies.
And like a tiny suitcase.
A little tiny suitcase, yeah.
Amazing. Again, kind of like a children's
like that she has a stuffed owl.
Yeah.
So
she's like, kind of very like, she doesn't seem weird, but then it's little details like that of like, oh yeah, you're really weird.
Bless her heart. He blew it. Hey, you dog. He blew it.
The dog's like, I don't care. Goodbye.
I don't fucking care. Get me out of here.
Lady, what are you doing?
So she wasn't a journalist yet. She found journalism after this.
No, she was.
No, she starts as a journalist.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
But you haven't gotten to that. You haven't gotten to that because it's in the Third Doctor era.
Okay.
She starts off as a Third Doctor companion post Joe. But we haven't gotten to the end of Joe yet. So
yeah, and I remember in School Reunion, there's like a moment where she's like, "No, I went back to what I always was. I was a reporter." And Ten's like, "Of course you are." God, he's so fucking good in that episode.
Yeah, yeah, he's quite good. That David Tennant,
he's
quite good.
He's a good one.
So that's the Hand of Fate. Hand of Fear. Hand of Fate's a Batman the Animated Series episode. That's the Hand of Fear. Next week we'll be talking about a very short Fifth Doctor story, only 2 parts, called The King's Demons. That'll be next time. But that's it for Hand of Fear, and we'll circle back on Sarah Jane in a while. I think we're probably a couple of years from getting to that point, but we'll eventually get back to her. So something to look forward to, I guess. All right, well that's the Hand of Fear. Okay, thanks for listening, everyone. Check out the Patreon link and the Discord link and all that stuff. But we'll talk to you next week with the King's Demons. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.